I like when someone comes to talk to me about
Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks, Tuesday, October 9th, 2018 is now 5 o'clock. City Clerk, please call roll.
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olsted.
Here.
Council Vice President Chad Grassel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Vetter.
Here.
Mike Pachavinsky. Tim Riepel.
Here.
Henry Tweeten.
Here.
Mark Demers.
Present.
Does determine a quorum. Number one, consider renewing contract with Countrywide Sanitation. In present is also Rachel Granavich. Mr. Stordahl, I'll lead it off, please. So if you want to come up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rachel and Countrywide Sanitation came forward with a proposal to extend their refuse and recycling contract for the upcoming 5 years. I guess our contract is, the current contract is to expire June 30th of 2019. So this one would take us into June 30th of 2024 if it were approved, I guess, to move on. And maybe Rachel can talk a little bit about her proposal that she put forth.
What we're asking for is a continuation with the contract for an additional 5 years after the first initial 5-year contract ends. What we have asked for is to keep it even until I think it's 2020. We would ask for a 3% increase and a 3% increase up and above for all the residential trash, the recycling, residential recycling, the green site, and any roll-off trash, pulls, and compost. We would leave everything the same, again, until all the way to 2020. So there wouldn't be any increases until that July of 2020.
Henry.
I checked the place where the material is dumped. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't read the English language, but it's getting better under control. I suggest it would be better for the city and the person doing it if the Water and Light would send a notice that the people should cut up their boxes. They're moving a lot of stuff, but there seems to be a lot of television and other things sold, and there's a lot of big boxes. But at this time, I'd like to move ahead that we renew the contract with Countrywide Sanitation. Personally, I'm very well satisfied their efforts, and I think they've earned it.
Thank you.
I don't have, I guess, too much to add, just that, the service from Countrywide has been good that we've received. I guess residential service, we haven't had very many complaints. Anytime we ask Countrywide to do something or pick up a different container or whatever, the services have been pretty good. One thing that Rachel and I kind of talked about in the proposed cost was that, the city getting a new truck, we're planning on getting a roll-off truck that would have the capability of picking up roll-offs as well. It would, our thoughts are right now is we would be replacing 2 trucks with one. So we'd be getting rid of a sand truck and a dump truck. And we'd use that roll-off truck as a dump truck and then have a sander body on that. And then just reduce our fleet by 1. But it would also have the capability of pulling roll-off containers. So, I don't know if it's something we'd get into in the next couple of years, maybe never, but 2, 3, 4 years down the road. When we get another truck or replace another truck, if the roll-off truck works well, it might be something in the city's best interest to pull containers from the green site. There isn't really that many that get pulled per week on a per week basis. So if we could handle that, and then even during our spring and fall cleanup, even in the short term, if we could just haul one, if we had one roll-off on the truck, we could haul it straight to the landfill. So we could load that and load, 2 or 3 times as much material. we would still need containers down at our yard from Countrywide to pull at that point, but there'd be some savings to us, you know, if we could do it that way. So in Countrywide's proposed pricing, they have 4 roll-off trash containers per pull, and then in the contract, it also talks about, you know, the roll-off compost containers and what they are per pull. So that was one of the questions I had for Rachel, I guess, is that, you know, if we decided that we were going to pull a few, or if we were going to take over the composting, how would that affect the pricing of the contract? So that was a question I had, and I guess, Rachel, you were looking into it, but at that point,
Right,
you hadn't.
right. We would certainly like to continue on with the whole package. We were just maybe concerned that there might be some piecemealing where we don't have this anymore and we have this, and that's why we considered the whole overall contract, and that's why we've tried to hold our pricing for the next 2 years. We'd certainly hate to see us lose a portion of that. I think we have, you know, well over $1 million invested in roll-off containers and roll-offs and side load trucks and so forth. So that was the only concern that I talked to Jason, was if the city of East Grand Forks decides to get a roll-off truck, you know, are we going to be able to continue to do the spring and fall cleanups and the compost and so forth. And then we also, again, with the front load bins too, there's another front load truck that we vested into. So that would be the only concern moving forward, is if we can continue, you know, with all of it. Also, you know, we thought if anybody has any suggestions of what we could do moving forward, as far as maybe even, and Jason, I just thought about this late today, and I thought, well, maybe we could talk about providing a third bin to people who want their compost picked up at the house, and they actually just pay it, you know, and we do a seasonal thing where they have a container. So if they can't haul it to the compost site, you know, we could provide that service on an, you know, individual basis. It's just an idea, you know, for us to think about. So those were the only concerns that I had in speaking with Jason on the roll-off truck. So.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to put our city attorney here on the spot for a second. I know we had a staff meeting earlier and we discussed part of this. I know you had some comments about some of the language in there is potentially being updated or outdated as terms of the old contract.
Well, what I would end up doing is I would just modify some of the whereases in the beginning of this thing, because it's talking about things that would no longer be applicable, because we aren't going out for an RFP this time. We would just be renewing it, so I would modify that. The rate for service, I'd probably just modify those paragraphs to indicate if it was approved that we would be paying according to the exhibit that was attached, rather than putting the individual numbers in these paragraphs like it started out as. The other thing that I would do is, if we're seriously considering for the best interest of the city to possibly take over or supplement the roll-off situation, I would put some type of a reopener in there where we could potentially do that on our behalf. And then if it's going to be detrimental or you know, be detrimental to the contract that Rachel's put forward, be able to have a reopener for negotiations on that portion of the contract, so that at least if it's a significant a reduction in their fee, they would be able to discuss opening with us a different pay schedule. That's what I would suggest if we're truly thinking about it. That way everybody's on the same page, you know where you're going, and if it's going to affect it, we'd be able to discuss it, negotiate it at that time. But and that would be basically it, because we spent a lot of time putting this together the last time, and the contract itself seems to satisfy the needs of the city and the needs of the service provider as written. So,
Taking those comments that you have, how long would it take you to look at that and get that to Rachel so she could look at it and then would move back to the council, would your recommendation have it just go to a council meeting or back to a work session?
Well, that would be up to, that. I'll leave that up to you. I wouldn't want to have this on the next council meeting. I just don't have time to look at it. I'm in court all week this week. So I would just put it together for the next work session. I mean, this contract goes through to June of next year. I'd put it on the next work session. I'll have everything to her before that next work session, as well as to you know, to David and the department heads for review. So I would put it on in 2 weeks. I could have something put together. It's not going to be much. It's just modifying the couple of paragraphs.
Could you have the capability of getting it to Rachel a week before that so she could have her attorney look at it or herself, and then she could attend the next work session?
I could probably have it to her attorney, or her and her attorney Thursday beforehand, you know, so that you'd have a couple of days beforehand for them to look at it.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's on the same page with that. And I too, I haven't, I've been satisfied for what the service has, you know, and I appreciate Rachel coming tonight. I think that looking at this and then knowing what we have out there for the next 5 years, it helps us with budgets, and also what discussions we should have going forward with what fees and the equipment and everything. You know, I've had discussions with Jason of what he sees coming down, what is needed in the future and what we can do. It's just overall equipment that we've used, no matter if it's supplementing what we're getting from Countrywide and what you use every day. So I think it's a good idea, and I think I wouldn't have any issues moving forward with it, so appreciate it.
One question. When we talk about a 3% increase in the year 2020, is that a single increase then for the balance of the contract, or would it be an annual increase thereafter?
It would be, no, it would increase 3% every year.
Every year thereafter?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'd want to negotiate that, because that goes a little faster than the rate of inflation.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would concur with everybody that's spoken so far that I think the service has been great. It's nice to see a local business being able to do it. I do want to make sure that we have, or the city has its options open to do what we want. You know, I spoke about at the last meeting potentially, you know, scaling back one of the cleanups. I don't want, you know, I know Rachel's got her prices based on per polls, and to me that says if we decide to scale back, you could do that within this contract. I would just want to make sure that we have the option to do that if we decide that that would be a way to go. And like I said, I think I wasn't here when this was decided the last time, but I think we've gotten a fair deal, and I thought it was a good price. Then I do agree that we want to have some sort of a long-term, you know, cost, but at the same time, we also have to figure out, do we put it out for RFPs at what point? You know, do you put it out in this extension, or do you wait till the next time? Or do you wait till 3 times down the road? At what point do you feel like you need to get some sort of a price, kind of a price alignment? And like, I'm not saying that we're getting taken to the cleaners here or anything. I just think at some point it's in our interest to go out into the market and see what that price point does, if it's at this point or if it's at the next reopener or what. But I think that's a question that the council needs to decide before you just decide. That's the first question, is do we want to have this just as an extension process, or do we want to have it as a RFP process? I don't really have religion either way. I just think that that's not necessarily, shouldn't fall on the staff's purview. It's really a policy decision by the council.
Mr. Grasso, you have any comments on that?
I'm fine with staying with Countrywide. I haven't had too many complaints, and then the complaints are just the pickups, and they've missed them, so, and they've came back and got them, so I have no problem with it at all.
One thing that we've done, and we've found that it's been very beneficial, we actually have one person who's in a service vehicle, and so if there is any missed pickups, there's any wheels that are broken, and things can happen, and pickups can be missed, and then with the green site, we have, where we check the boxes and so forth. So we do have an individual now that's what he does all day, delivers carts, fixes carts, if there's any missed pickups, things like that. So I think that helps a lot too with the retention of that, to keep it down. I know when we first started the contract, for the first few months, it was rocky for us to get everything lined up and get our routes in place, and get everyone. Another thing that happens too, if our normal driver's on vacation, sometimes the route can be done a little bit different. So that can happen too. So, but we really try hard not to make that happen. So.
One other little thing that I've heard from some residents is, just on occasion, especially on the recyclables, some is left in the bottom.
Okay.
If the guys can maybe give one more shake at the top of the dump there.
Yeah.
Because I have heard that from several of our residents.
Yeah, and I've talked to Bruce about that too, and I think when it clenches, that can happen.
Yep.
Mr. Vedder, you have any comments of either looking at the extension only or?
No, I'm open to going either way. I don't have a problem with their service, so.
Mr. Reid?
Fine with everything.
I was just going to say, because I said this in the department head meeting, I says, when you don't even know they're doing it, there's got to be something that's being done right. And, and realistically, I put my stuff out in the morning, and I come home at night, and I put it back in the garage, and I don't know they've been there or they haven't been there. So I think they've been doing a really, really good job.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess one thing, a question for Rachel, that research maybe, you brought up the individual composting service. I don't know if it would fly. I just think there isn't a ton of people that would like it, but I can see that some people would. I mean, I just wonder about the size of the cart necessary. I know how much, I don't have a huge yard, and I know how much stuff I go through on a pretty weekly basis in the spring. And then like what the minimum number of carts you would need to make that be a viable service, I guess, would be, something we would have to think about if you thought you could get by with, I don't know, a couple hundred, or if it'd have to be,
Right.
1,000, or I don't know what you need
Right.
to make it viable for you, because otherwise, I just don't, I think it works the way we're doing it, but.
I think that would maybe be something where we'd have to investigate it and see how many people would actually want that type of service, if it even makes sense, and what that would actually really cost. I would assume, a lot of people get their yards done by lawn maintenance companies now, seems like. So.
I don't.
Can't afford that.
No.
I have a brother in the business, so. And I also want everyone to know too, our whole company is insured by an East Grand Forks company. Evergreen Insurance insures us, and all our fuel is bought from a Minnesota company here, all our bulk fuel. So we appreciate the city of East Grand Forks. The Blue Line Club was excellent in helping us deliver and orchestrate the delivery of all the carts when we first started, and we also promote that, and we give them $1,500 a year back on that, and we like to support the exponent. So we try to give back to the city as well, and to the people in business here. So.
Well, if everybody's fine with it, have Mr. Galsted make his necessary changes. If everybody's fine with that, and come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be fairly limited, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Good, Rachel?
all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for
Appreciate
your
it.
time.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming.
hope it doesn't snow 8 inches. That's what they said now.
Oh, boy.
Report.
I didn't hear that.
Okay.
8 inches.
I'm ignoring that.
Move on to number 2, request for winter equipment lease. Mr. Stordahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. So each year, the city has been leasing a motor grader for snow removal for a snow season. This year, the agreements, I guess the lease agreements changed a little bit. We've been typically going with Butler Cat, but it changed significantly for us. So I'm recommending that we go with RDO equipment for our winter equipment lease this year.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Stordahl on that? Mr. Demers?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just ask if we aren't already to create like a alternate universe scenario where we track what the difference in the different versions would be, so we could come back and look over a 5-year window, you know, if we would go with the
Yeah, we've been doing that.
and it'd be interesting to see what that would look like
Yeah.
if you have
And
that data.
well, we did that if we would have went with Butler Machine last year, let's say, with this type of contract, I think we spent something like $7,000 on a motor grader last year. If we'd used this lease agreement with Butler, or if we would have used that, it would have been something like $30,500 that way. So I also take like an average of the snowfall per year too, each year, and kind of add to that average, kind of get a better estimate, I guess, of what that might be, because, you know, some years we don't have much snow, other times we do, so.
Anybody else have anything? Henry, do you have something on the snow removal?
Well, I think it's very important doing what we're doing, having the extra blade. Looks like Santa Claus is coming early, and Mr. Stordahl knows what he's doing, and there's a safety element in this for regard to the fire trucks and calls that we make for sick people and so forth, so I support it very strongly.
That's included.
Anybody else have anything? See none, Jason, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Number 3, request to continue parking ticket food shelf program. Chief Hedlund.
Thank you, Mr. President. Directly related to the snow removal situation is this request. For the past 2 years, council has approved our department conducting a program at the start of the snow season where our street maintenance tickets, snow emergency tickets, when those go out for typically the start of the season through December, people can pay their fine, so to speak, with a donation of food to the East Grand Forks Food Shelf. They drop it off at the police department. We periodically, as we accumulate a number of items, we'll bring those food items over to the food shelf. It's been without question a benefit to the food shelf, which is, of course, a benefit to the city as a whole. Our first year 2 years ago, I believe we collected a little over 200 pounds. I don't recall the exact number last year, but it was significantly more than it was 2 years ago. So I'm sure you all remember we had quite a bit of snow early last year, and some very significant snowstorms, which resulted in a lot of people getting those tickets that they were then able to pay with the food donation. I think this serves a positive interest, obviously, in that it's helping the less fortunate members of our community, but it also is, in a way, kind of a friendly reminder. I think both the mayor and Mr. Murphy will agree with me that parking tickets bring forth way more than their expected number of citizen complaints. So this is one way to kind of soften the blow of those first tickets that go out at the start of the season. It's a good reminder to folks that, hey, you know, keep your cars off the street. And of course, the fewer cars we have on the streets when it does come to a true snow emergency, or even our daily street maintenance parking for the calendar parking, makes it a whole lot easier for the public works folks that are running the plows to keep our streets clean and get them cleaned properly with as little effort as possible. So I would like your support to continue this program for this year.
I think it's a great idea. Appreciate you guys doing that. It's great. Anybody have anything for Chief?
I could
Mayor?
offer one. I know we do get into snow removal time, and I'm thinking of a citizen last year whose vehicle received a tow sticker, which is a 24-hour tow. It stayed on there for a week, and it was towed. Then after a week, this was a gentleman with disabilities of various kinds, and it got pretty unpleasant at the end.
I do recall that situation.
But I just want to thank your people for trying to customize it to him, waiting that full week instead of 24 hours. And I know that's what you do. You'll try to, really customize it. You don't go to the letter necessarily if you have any latitude at all to serve our residents. So I really appreciate the way that your people are alert and aware of those special situations and trying to take care of people and still not have their vehicle out where it will pile with snow and become an obstacle that really is not a safe situation for the rest of everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. Number 4, consider approval of the Grand Forks TAM plan. Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next 4 items are basically housekeeping items. The first one being approval of the Grand Forks TAM plan. TAM stands for Transit Asset Management. In order for us to continue receiving state and federal funding, we have to have a plan available looking at our buses, our facilities, our shelters, what their useful life is, how many numbers of buses we would have out or we would have being maintained, what our maintenance schedule looks like. With Grand Forks being our lead agency, they are adopting the state of North Dakota's Transit Asset Management Plan. We have received confirmation from MnDOT that we can go ahead and jump on this plan. And so I'm just asking that you approve the plan so that we can continue to get our federal and state funding.
Anybody have any questions? See none. Move on to the next one. Request for recommendations of appointment to, missed one. Consider approval of financial procedures for FTA grant management.
Every 3 years, we go through a federal audit of our transit services programs, financial accounting, different types of things. It's a very extensive audit. Once they come and they spend a week reviewing over 18 different areas of concern, they write a report and give us findings of things that we need to improve. 3 of the items that were on the findings for our city were related to the website and different programs, ADA programs, Title VI programs that we've adopted through Grand Forks. So we've made those changes. The one that was specific to East Grand Forks was that we did not have any written procedures for accepting of our grant dollars and how we go about that. What we did, because again, Grand Forks is the lead agency, I took a look at their financial procedures. I worked with staff, Carla and Audrey, our accounts payable, to make sure that it met the city's needs. And then we need to approve these written financial procedures so that we can remove this finding from our triennial. So,
Anybody have any questions? I see none. Wish this was always this easy, right?
yeah.
Request for recommendation of appointment to Regional Transportation Coordination Council. Ms. Ellis.
Again, MnDOT and the state of Minnesota are putting together groups to try to coordinate transportation for the elderly, veterans, disabled, kind of a last mile, from beginning mile to last mile. They're preparing a board. They're going to receive funding. They've asked that I sit on it, being the city's transit manager, so that I can work with other agencies throughout our region, which includes a number of different counties, to try to see if we can try to coordinate our transportation and make it as efficient and effective as possible. So,
Anybody have any questions? See none. Number 7, consider rental lease agreement with MPO.
the MPO has submitted a proposal to extend their lease 1 more year at the same rate that they were for 2018. It has gone through, Clarence and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, the finance board, but not the exec board, or has it gone through both?
Just the finance.
Just the finance committee. So there's still some questions as to, you know, how many offices are going to want to maintain here. That's why they've requested the 1-year lease. I didn't see any issues with it. We updated it to make sure that we have their storage rates correct, and the rate still seems to be a good rate, the going rate that I would see. So I didn't have any questions or concerns with it if anyone else does.
Anybody have any questions on that? I see none.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And then just one other quick item. We have hired a new maintenance person. We've given him an offer. He will be starting at the pay grade step 1. Then with benefits, we had a number of successful candidates. We're really pleased with this gentleman. He's got both apartment and hotel maintenance experience, so he's very used to doing a number of different things, jumping from place to place, customer service, working with people. So we're very happy. That'll go to the council on the 16th for approval. So
Okay, thank you.
that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Number 8, consider renewing the lease agreement with Independent School District 595. Reid.
Thank you, Mr. President. So our lease agreement with the school district for the use of our ice arenas for school activities, ice hockey, the sport of ice hockey, physical education classes, things like that. That expired with the end of the last school year. And the final payment on that addendum, which included the renovation project for the girls' locker room at the Civic Center, that payment was due this fall. So we need to renew our use agreement with them for this current school year, the 2018-19 school year. So we've put forward just a 1-year agreement on the same terms as the previous agreement. It'd be $100,000 for the year for the use of all of the arenas. Any questions from anyone?
Thank you, sir. Number 9, discussion on fitness court grant through National Fitness Campaign. Reid.
Thank you again. So the National Fitness Campaign, they actually reached out to David first, probably 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, we're about that.
With an opportunity or a request to see if East Grand Forks would be interested in applying for grant funding through their campaign with the intent of having it be kind of the starting funds needed to build an outdoor fitness court. The total project under this group's estimation, and they would help us from the grant writing process through fundraising, recruitment of sponsors, all the way through the building and install phase of the court. The total estimated project is $120,000 plus some installation cost. I don't have a great number at this point of what that additional installation cost would be, but that's the way that their brochure that is enclosed in the packet described it. $30,000 of that would be available from a grant through the National Fitness Campaign, which they've already authorized per City Council's approval to apply for that. I think based on the fact that they've reached out to us and authorized it, that we would be highly likely to receive that $30,000 if we put forth the application. And then the remaining $90,000+ would be up to the city to either fundraise or fund locally. So really at this point, I think just looking to share the information with this group and get some input from each of you on if it's something you think would be a valuable asset to our community, if it's something that we could, you feel is reasonable or realistic to fundraise for, and if it could serve a purpose for us. There are a few communities locally, when I say locally, I mean in the Midwest of the United States that have recently installed them. Waite Park, Minnesota was the first in Minnesota to install it. They just opened it this summer. I think David will have some information from their city administrator on that one. And there are 3 other communities, one in each the state of Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana, that all National Fitness Campaign referred to me as people to reach out to as a resource that successfully finished the campaign and installed the courts to all were opened this summer. I've left messages with their Parks and Recreation directors in each of those communities, but have not heard back from them. The only thing I do know is that in the same case as Waite Park, is they were all just open this summer, so we don't have great long-term information as far as the number of users in those communities or what type of use they see during the fall, winter, and early spring months. So leave it for any questions from that point.
One question I do have, so let's say that we move forward and say, well, our goal is to raise the money, fundraising. What timeline do we have once we turn in the application for the grant, get the money? How long do we have after that to raise the money?
David, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that in our conversation, our brief conversation we've had, I don't think that there's been a specific deadline that we had to have the money raised by. I remember him saying it could be a couple-year process if it needed to be, and it's totally non-binding in receiving the grant dollars. If we say we want to put forth the effort and a year down the road we haven't had the pledges that we've hoped to have, we could go back to them and say it doesn't look like it's going to work for us, and there's no binding contract on our part. We could just simply give the money back to them, and they would find another community to use that in.
They did say their goal, their ideal thing, they would obviously like to see it constructed next construction season if at all possible. They want to see a bunch of these move in, so they'd like to see it in a year, but they understood that it could take longer than that.
My concern here is we're going to be going to the well pretty soon for a possible update at the arenas, or maybe a possible another arena down the line. That if we start, we're going to be hitting some of the same people on this. Just a thought that we should be looking at that, because I don't want to be going to them, coming back to them in a year and saying, we'd like to get another $25,000 out of you for this or something like that. Just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate you guys for bringing this forward. I think I talked to Reid about something similar to this in the past, kind of how to enhance our trail system. I guess I had a little bit different vision of what it would be, but this kind of falls within that bracket of using our trail system, getting people outside, doing more than just walking, biking, the ability to exercise outside. Wondering, obviously there's been you look at the map and there's a few places that are north. One thing to check into is how durable this stuff will be. Will we be looking at replacing stuff in 5 years, or is it 10 years, or is it 15 years? It looked like it was like carbon steel, but I don't know about like the flooring. I guess maybe doing some research into what that is. If it has to be this setup, like, do you have to purchase this unit, or is there alternate units that you can kind of create? And then I guess I don't know, this one talks about like an app and stuff, because some of this stuff is kind of, it's a bar or it's a ring, A lot of people that don't have familiarity wouldn't know, so they use the app. Is the app going to be free? Is it guaranteed to be free for so long? And those type of things are some of the things I would wonder about. But like I said, I appreciate this and I like the direction we're going with it. I don't think it hurts anything to start down the process. Wondering where we're at as far as the ADJOURN dollars, if we have money left in that, if some of that could be applicable for that. Because that's the worry I have kind of on that funding thing is we've signed an agreement with ADJOURN to be the named health and fitness provider for, I don't remember what
Not
the
a
language.
provider, a partnership.
Right, it was a partnership, and, if you go out for additional things, you couldn't name it, obviously, because it would be, unless it was ADJOURN decided to throw some money at it or whatever, but that could, just that relationship could throw off. We'd have to look at the nature of that relationship and see if we'd be stepping on any toes if we're going out and finding more dollars or any of that kind of stuff. So those would be the concerns I would have are really just what our relationship is with ADJOURN, what we have left in the bank through them, if anything, I don't know. But yes, but I like the direction.
Reid.
Just a couple quick follow-ups to that, a little bit of more information. The app that they have designed is free to use for anybody. When you go, there's information on these gyms that basically tells you how to download it from your smartphone, and it's all free. And so that'll have instruction of how to use the gym as well as workouts, so you could go through and select from a multitude of different workouts. In researching Janesville, Wisconsin, that has it, I thought it was really interesting on their website. They had a page on their city webpage dedicated to this fitness court, and they had scheduled activities with different departments in the city when they first started activating it. So it wasn't just Parks and Recreation, but it was the fire department was out there one day at 1 o'clock, and the fire department was leading the instruction on how to use the gym. And the next day was the police department, and the day after that it was the Parks and Recreation department, and so on. So they kind of use it as a community engagement tool, which I thought was a really creative way to try to get everybody involved in how it all works. To give people that first, if they were interested, needed some instruction on what they were doing there, they could do that. We have not talked with Ultra at all about this specifically, but because this is the first that anybody's heard about it at this meeting tonight, I would certainly think that they'd be worth having that conversation with them. We have, in some of our discussions with the committee that we have formed between Parks and Rec and the Ultra group, we have discussed this type of thing, though, not this fitness court specifically or this project, but the idea of having different workout stations along the Greenway Trail that somebody could run, kind of like Mark referred to. They could start by doing pull-ups, and they could run a quarter mile and do push-ups at the next station and so on as they go down the trail. We have discussed that with Ultra, and maybe a way to use some of the dollars that we've been afforded from them. The winterization part of it, when we were on the phone with National Fitness Campaign, they felt like there wasn't anything that would need to be winterized. It's all, because it's all stationary, at the very most that we'd ever want to look at is if there's a cable or something that may want to be removed. But they feel like it's a setup that can be used year-round. As long as you keep the snow off of it, people would be able to use it, no matter what. I don't know if I hit on all of those things or not. I guess maybe the last thing to touch on, just to Mark's questions, is this setup, the fitness court setup that's in front of you, this 38 by 38 square, this is what we would get from this group. If we went through this source, it would be a gym all-in-one setup like this. There are other avenues we could go if we wanted to do something different. Just about every playground equipment company in the country now sells fitness equipment to be used outdoors in settings like this. So if we wanted to do something different and set it sporadically across the trail, we could do that. I have not priced any of that out to see how that compares to what this gym compares, and I could certainly do that to have that as part of this conversation if we wanted to moving forward.
Mark, you have something to that?
Yeah, I think, I'll admit when my vision isn't the right one or might not be the right one, because thinking about this, it makes maybe more sense to have something centrally located. Because if you want to bring it back to something we've talked about in the past, is if you want to make it a connected type of thing where you're connecting departments, you're connecting people, creating a centralized location like this, for maintenance and all that other stuff, but it would be a gathering place. It would be that spot that you could have more connections. So I could change my vision to get to something like this, so I appreciate it. And has the board weighed in on any of this yet, or have they seen anything?
Haven't seen it.
Haven't seen it. Work off the Life Connected,
There you go.
That's what I'm saying.
There.
We did briefly visit about this, and I like the idea of talking to some Midwestern communities and making sure that it's well utilized. What you wouldn't want to see is a city effort that was built and placed and never used or scarcely used. That we wouldn't like. But if there's a history of it in other Midwestern, I say Midwestern because of the cold climate, communities, and I love that it would tie into the Greenway. That's already a natural thing. We talked about maybe having this be where parents could do their thing while the kids played on some playground equipment in visual proximity to this. And I do think you'd gauge community interest a lot if you come through your Park and Rec committee, and then also on the fundraising. If the fundraising was brisk, to me that would suggest that folks would say, yeah, this is something we could utilize. And I do look at it a lot like the Sherlock Park Playground. If it is the local buy-in, the local investment, from our community members as far as donated money and whatnot. It seems like that would raise the likelihood of it really catching on and being utilized. So if it was there and people were out there, good numbers of people using it, maybe starting in the early spring days and taking it out into the late fall, and if we get a confirmation that that's happening in other communities, that would be a big deal for me. I would like to hear that.
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Actually, I went to Waite Park on Saturday of this last week. It's only 15 miles from where our cabin is. So we actually went down and closed it out. And so when we were done, we took a trip over to Waite Park and checked it out. It's only been open there since August. And actually, when I went there to check it out, in the parking lot that serves it, there were two of the Waite Park police officers parked side by side talking to each other. So I just went up and talked to them and asked them what they've seen of it, and as far as usage, and they said when it first opened, they didn't see a lot of it out there. They think probably just because it was new and whatever, but they said as time goes on, they've seen more and more people use it. It's adjacent to the pickleball court, and they have a splash park right next to the pickleball court, and so it's kind of a destination spot anyway. So they anticipate that it'll probably get used a fair amount in the summer. What they've noticed when it gets used the most is when they apparently have a fairly large pickleball league or something. So when they play, people are there playing pickleball, the spouses will be using this equipment, and they also see young mothers and young families with strollers and little kids and stuff that will come out there. They'll work out while the kid uses the playground equipment, which is right next to it. So they said we'll see what it looks like for the winter. What I have a couple pictures of myself using it, if you're interested. I'll send them. I'm just kidding. But I do.
Not just sitting on it.
Yes. Sweaty.
In my coveralls and stuff too, because I was closing up the cabin. But it's heavy duty. It's powder coated. Some of it's stainless steel, and the flooring it's pretty thick and it's pretty heavy duty, and it appears like it might be that porous material that's supposed to let that kind of drain through so it doesn't sit there. So it looked high quality, and it seemed pretty nice. And from what you said, from what I saw, the officer told me they said it's getting used more and more.
Is it permeable, or is it on like a cement slab and then you put this stuff on top of it?
It appears like it's what they said. It looks like there's some sort of like a sand or gravel underneath it, so that the water can drain through.
The flooring material that you would work out on it's the same thing that they use in playgrounds. It's called poured in place rubber, so it's a safe surfacing if people would fall on it, but it's a durable material. We don't have it at any of our playgrounds. It's very expensive, but a lot of inclusive playgrounds use it because it's just much more durable. It's not something you're going to slip on or trip on like wood chips or rubber chips would be. It's called poured in place.
And the only reason I brought it up is because the discussion of utilizing in conjunction with the greenway, if it was anything other than permeable, and there might be other reasons not to put it on the wet side of the levee, but you couldn't even you couldn't even discuss doing it if it was a concrete slab underneath it.
Sorry. One other thing that I thought about as we think about being connected, is this adaptable to like ADA standards, or are people, or is it going to be just for, 16 to 50-year-old, healthy adults that are going to be able to use this, or is it modifiable for ADA? Or I know it looks like the ramps and stuff are all accessible, or you can get on, but
I guess I can answer that. I think in one of it might be in the video. I don't know if it's in this part of it. In the video, they do show a disabled person utilizing it. I guess what I can tell you from what I saw of it, and again, I don't know what the legal requirements are, but with the body weight exercises and those type of things, where you can go in, you can see in there, it's pretty wide, so you could get say, a wheelchair in there and do some of the stuff, but, so I believe it does have a certain ADA compliance portion to it. Like I said, it must not be, it was in the video that we sent that does show disabled person utilizing some of the equipment.
And I guess to check, maybe contact Waite Park, the city, to see what exactly, if 90,000 was the total cost, or if they spent less or more, or plus if you build sidewalks out, or, I mean.
I did talk to, her name is Shauna Johnson. She's the city administrator in Waite Park. She's been there for quite a while, and I've known her for many, many years. So I did get her on the phone. I talked to her for about 20 minutes about this particular deal. She actually said that they utilized, they didn't actually do the full 30,000. They were able to fundraise a significant portion of it, along with the grant. She did say that the group that, this National Fitness Campaign group was very helpful in helping to solicit donations and working with them on that. And they did get a couple of large corporate sponsors that helped out quite a bit. So, so she said they didn't put in the full 30. They were able to fundraise more than that.
Anybody else have any questions on this? Or?
I'm sure it wouldn't affect anything with our insurance carrier. No concern with that?
It's a good question, and one I hadn't even considered. It'd be worth reaching out to them, because it wouldn't be the same as in our Parks and Recreation activities where everyone's signing in a waiver and release before they participate. This would be a pretty open setting where I think people would just be able to come and use it freely, so I'm sure Ron would have an input, and that might fall under our recreational
Well, I think
immunity,
it would be in your recreational immunity portion of the, unless we didn't do so, unless we were independently negligent on something,
Sure.
It should be covered.
So foreseeable for you, what is your next step, and what are you looking for from us? Are you looking for anything else today from us, or do you have the questions that we have out there? Is this, you do some more research and bring it back to us, and is that the main objective, or?
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at David. I think we could certainly continue some more research and bring it back if this group wants that. We have a window. What's the window to apply for the grant? It's pretty flexible.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is. Yeah,
I can't recall
but
what
it
it
was
was
fairly flexible.
Yeah.
Personally, how I'd like to see it move forward, if I don't hear any real objections from the council, I'd like to see what kind of buy-in we get from the park board here as well, and then from there, do the initial application for the grant money. Like I said, like Reid alluded to earlier, if it turns out that we just cannot raise the money, it just doesn't go forward. We don't get, you apply for the $30,000, they earmark it for you, but you don't get it until the point that you would be willing to start the installation. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But so that's where I'd like to bring it to the park board, see if there's any real objection to that, or if we can get some good buy-in on that, and then I think I'd like to just move ahead and apply.
Everybody's fine with that? I'm assuming. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Demers, second by Reid. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned.